My name is Greg Burt. I'm a retired colonel from the Royal 22nd Regiment. 31 years ago, when I was in the Balkans, I was in Rasovich. I was the OC combat support. And in combat support, I had the recce platoon and I had the anti-armor platoon. But also because the deputy commander left very early in the tour, there was a gap. I was also in charge of CIMIC for the battalion.
So you were there in August 1995 when the Croats attacked and retook Serbian Krajina. What was that like?
First of all, it was a bit frustrating because we had, through anti-armor platoon, was able to see a distance, and the platoon commander, Sandra Perron, was putting in reports that there's a lot of extra traffic than normal. So that was the first indicator that we were saying this, and they were saying, no, it's not the military movement. So we didn't like that answer, but we still kept an eye on it. Secondly, during a leadership meeting in Zadar, which is near Rastovich, where we were based, a couple lieutenant colonels were discussing, and they said two things that hit me. First of all, we're not going to have the Cyprus solution, i.e., on the green line that they have in Cyprus. And secondly, this is our last summer. We're not in Rastovich. That stuck with it. That's two indicators right there that, hindsight is 2020. But we noted all this. And then while I was on HLTA, we got back, and I was with one of the other company commanders at the line companies, and he knew a shortcut through an OP that we can get through that would save an hour of Jeep ride. So when we got there, he had passed through there before, but there was new people there. He did not know them, and they would not let us through. So that's our third indicator that something fishy was going on. And then when we got back, we got a call. We sent our two LOs, and we're informed that they're going to go on the offensive. And so that was the first thing. We didn't know when, but we knew what was happening. Then all of a sudden, we started hearing bombs going overhead. And then we got reports. 2 or 3 of our OPs were hit directly with mortar bombs, and a couple were actually taken hostage by the Croats. They came up using UN rules of engagement. Don't shoot, friend, got up there. And as soon as he got through in front of the OP, took a pistol out and put it to the lieutenant's head. And the other one put a grenade over the top of the vehicle that was in there. So the person inside, was going to die. So that was how they took over. And they took those guys out and they were evacuated, and the whole OPs were ransacked. So that was going on for a couple of days. And during that time, I was the night watchman, because the CO was away at the time. So the deputy commander was in charge. So he would do from most of the day, and then I would take over about 10 o'clock at night. And at night, and that's at that time, some of our OPs evacuated back to their company house because there was no line lift anymore. And that was the key thing. And then you had people coming to our gates in Kinin and in Rasovich. So we let these refugees, we thought they were, until UNHCR said, no, they're displaced people. They are not refugees. So they have no mandate to look after them. So General Foray, as I understand it, said, okay, UN will look after these displaced persons. So once everything settled down, the whole area was controlled by the Croats. We had to go through OPs with them and everything. And we had on our camp, I think it was about 300 displaced people, and it was over 2,000 in Kinin. And once everything settled down, my company was given the role of protection. I'm going to move them out to Kinin in one place. Recce platoon had the first couple of weeks, and then anti-armor platoon with Sandra Perron looked after him. Now, this was very touchy because we had about 300 to move from Rasovich to Kinin. And my group was responsible to getting them out. And then the Croats came in, there's a rifle pointed at my stomach. And I had to move, I made sure the camera was watching, move the rifle aside. And we had to protect these displaced people for the whole motorcade down to Kinin. Inside of Kinin, we set up extra OPs around it. And we made sure that they were protected and looked after and fed and all that stuff. And this was more a humanitarian part we're doing. And we were having challenges moving around inside of Croatia, because the Croats had taken it back and belonged to them. They were giving us a hard time on the road, slowing us down. So we used to use countermeasures and start taking their names and all that kind of stuff at the same time. So it was a very dicey situation. And what was hard to explain is all the bombs coming down and displaced people running to UN camps for protection. And then after that, we had to wait just before our redeployment. The Czechs came in and they were going to move them all outside of the Krajina. So they came in and took over the displaced people, and then they moved them off because the mission was changing from UN to UMPR-4 or whatever you want to call it at the time. There's changing, and there was a whole Czech battalion came in to escort these displaced persons to outside of what was the Krajina. So I don't know what happened to him afterwards, but it was very stressful, and it was a call by General Ferrand to take these displaced people in because UNHCR, their mandate, they're displaced people, they're not refugees, so we don't have the same mandate. So that was the key significant event the last month inside of Combat 1, I think we were called at the time. And so that's a touching anecdote. We've seen the indicators. Hindsight is 2020, but nothing really raised us, but we were ready. And one thing that we did do when we got in, the CO made sure that each of our bunkers on the OPs were solidified. And they had it's called the citadels. They called them citadels, of course, bandos. A couple of thousand sandbags. It was an engineer that sorted it all out. And people were not complaining, but as soldiers like putting all these sandbags down, replacing what was there. And when you ask those OPs that were hit by a mortar, they said, "What would you do if you had to do it all over again?" More sandbags. So that's a funny anecdote that came out of that.
So did you have any casualties in your battalion?
No casualties per se in physical.
Okay.
I believe over time there was a bit people seeing things that they shouldn't have wanted to see, especially the refugees. And the story I didn't tell you was that we get this clothing, right? But there's never underwear or socks. And I got this money, Zeller's company, a guy was there, and he said, "I got $3,000 I can give to you. What can it be? What can we do with it?" And then that's what Sandra Perron said, "Major, underwear and socks." And so when we got the delivery, it was like giving gold to these women and children. Underwear and socks there's no way. So I learned from that. When you get supplies, ask for them extra, because when you donate clothing, you don't donate that, right? And so that's never in the package. That's another interesting anecdote of the CIMIC part that I was indirectly involved in.
And these DPs that you're talking about, these displaced persons,
Yes.
I'm assuming those are Serbs that are being moved out.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I used to tell the wife when I get back, imagine if I had 2 grocery bags full of clothes. I got the 2 kids in front. You got the 2 kids with you. You look around, you don't know where I am. Your house is burning, and that's what you left with, what you could carry. And we've seen a lot of Aftermath teddy bearers and clothes it was a mass exodus, but those who couldn't get away fast enough went to the UN camps.
And
it was 3,000 get in.
And I'm just curious, when you were there before the Croats attacked, what did you have a plan? Did the battalion have a plan, sort of what to do in that eventuality in terms of rules of engagement, returning fire, or obstructing the Croats? What had you been told at the time?
Well, we didn't know that Operation Storm was going to happen. That's the first thing. So we made sure that the OPs were livable, because they were very rudimentary when we got in there. We went from a World War One Allied trench, I believe, to a World War One German trench, better equipped, and so in no way we'd think that was going to end. We did some plans of evacuation. I was responsible for that. I had to put together a plan, and the number of vehicles we had, I think every officer would have had to drive a Jeep or something. So we had more vehicles than we were drivers. So there was, I went through that whole process, mass evacuation. So some of that stuff was actually used after the fact when we had to tear our things apart because the line was no longer there. So firstly, we upgraded the OPs. We didn't think this was going to be over. We figured this was going to be a long haul. And a bit of our experience at that time, as you know, were people were in Cyprus, so they understand what the green line is and the OPs. So it was looking like that. And that's why I guess the Lieutenant Colonel in Zadar said, we're not doing the Cyprus solution here. So I guess even at strategic level, people were thinking that. So we had no idea that was going to happen. We wouldn't have worked that much on those OPs if we wouldn't. There's about 3,000 or 4,000 sandbags just on each OP, right? So they were hardened, but the beauty is that it was for the long haul. But because they did that, I think we probably had some lives saved because of that. So it's planned for a long haul, but actually was the protection needed for a couple of those OPs that got direct hits on that day or those couple of days.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about Operation Storm that you wanna say?
We think that there was a lot of war crimes going on, reported, but nothing was done about it. And that was the only thing that the spoils go to the winner, I guess. But it was a difficult situation. We seen the kids and it just overnight thing changed, right? We were like, we never had a job anymore. The only job we had was packing up and my company looking after those 3,000 refugees, I call them, displaced persons, until the Czech battalion came in and escorted them back, I guess, outside of the Krajina. Things went on, we tried to report it, but that's what I think. So I'm not going to get into the strategic political what I think there, because you don't know, right? So it was just iffy. It was not on our radars. We know it was going to happen. The CO wouldn't have been on HLTA, right. So he couldn't even get back. That was interesting times.